All right, we are recording and we are live streaming.
Okay, I'm gonna start us off then. I just have a couple of opening remarks before we open up the Q&A session. So hello everybody, good evening. My name is Bryn. I'm the Executive Director of the Cannabis Control Board, and I'm here tonight with Lauren Higby, who's our Deputy Director of Licensing, and Carrie Jaguar, who is our Director of Compliance and Enforcement. And Nellie Marvel is also here, who's our Outreach and Education Manager. So I want to start out by thanking the staff of the CCB who are here this evening. And also I want to thank everybody else who's joined us for the Q&A session on inventory tracking, lab testing, and product registration. I hear lots of people joining, so I'm going to just kind of talk slow for these introductory remarks because they're very important. I wanted to start out by saying that these are all like regulatory frameworks that the Cannabis Control Board is building while we are implementing them at the same time. So it's very natural that there is some confusion and some questions about them. And we're very happy to be here tonight to provide some clarity on these new regulatory processes. So I want to start out by saying that this event is really, the purpose of it is to assist people who are actively navigating the process of getting products to the regulated market. And what that means is that we are here tonight to help licensees and applicants that are in the queue for licensure to understand what it is that the CCB is asking of them to be compliant. That is why we're here, is to help folks who are really in it and trying to figure it out. So as I'm sure many people on this call know, the CCB is always open to hearing feedback, but this really isn't the appropriate time for suggestions or complaints, because we really want to maximize this hour for people who are trying to navigate these processes to help them understand how to do it. So I would just ask that everybody please be respectful of everyone's time when you're called on. And if you do have feedback for us, we really would like to hear it. And please submit it to us through our public comment portal on our website. It's very easy to find. That portal is there's a link to the portal on the same page that you found the link to join this meeting. So we really would like to hear it, but now is not the time to provide those comments in public. So I'm going to turn this over to Lauren and Carrie in a moment for them to go through some questions that we have received online prior to this event before we open it up to a Q&A. But before I do that, I'm just going to go through the process briefly for product registration, because that just seems like a logical place to start. So we're currently registering products through a form on the CCB website. And I want to emphasize that this is really an interim registration system. So what you do is you fill out the form on the website with your information, and then you submit supplemental documentation, including your product label, your product packaging, and your testing results in an email to ccb.products@vermont.gov. And all of this is laid out on the website. It's very helpful if you submit all of those documents in one email. So having the label, the package, and the COA in one place really helps our staff review your registration application more quickly. So after you fill out their form, there's a separate portal for your $50 product registration fee, and then you get an email confirming that your application has been uploaded. So we're expecting that the final registration system is going to launch before the end of the year. So that system is going to run through our licensing portal. So it's going to be very similar to your licensing application. It will include submitting your registration application. We will send back any incomplete application. You'll have the opportunity to edit that application and upload supporting documents. And then the CCB will communicate with you directly through the portal. So that should all be a pretty familiar process. So I'm going to stop talking there. But again, I want to thank everyone for being here. And just to say one more time that this event is really to assist people who are navigating the process we're here tonight to help everybody who is a licensee or an applicant in the queue understand what the CCB is asking of you in order to be compliant. That's why we're here tonight. So thanks for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Lauren and Carrie.
Lauren, I think you've got the answers to a lot of the questions that were submitted online, and if you want me to read the question and you answer it, that works, or you can just do it all yourself. Let me know what works for you.
Well, I was going to start by branching off what Bryn said, specifically about product registration, and start with those questions, and then hand it over to you for inventory tracking, etc.
There you go.
That works. One question came in specifically talking about packages with labeling in less than 10 font and large warning labels that are hard to fit on the label or on the packaging, and thinking about getting larger containers. And so I just want to point us all back to our packaging and labeling guidance, where it's really saying those warning labels need to be clear and legible. And we can have the warning labels, the narrative warning, split up on two sides if that makes it easier to fit on your desired packaging. That was the first one. Another one is talking specifically about what are the requirements for child deterrence on flour. And there are some push stop type lids with no safety tops or tamper evident tabs. Is that okay? And there's a wonderful one-sheeter on our guidance page regarding child resistance versus child deterrent. So I'll let everyone know that for packaging to be child deterrent, which it does for flour, it must be tear resistant and difficult enough to open that it would discourage a child under 5 from accessing the contents.
I don't know how to make her. This is like not Zoom.
I don't really need to watch it. So.
Hi, everyone.
That was Nathan. You're not muted.
In terms of the tamper evident strip, there's some people that have put the sticker over the lid, and that has been seen in different iterations. Another question discussed or asked about a public-facing inventory tracking database. And I think this was brought up too for registered products in the market. And I think we're headed in that direction. But right now, as Bryn said, we're working through our interim solution towards a more, I'd say, helpful, accessible, and smoother system for people to access that information through the portal. Just, you'll bear with me as I scroll down. There's a really exciting question, if I can call it that and qualify it in that way, asking about how glass containers can be reused compliantly. And I hope you all just heard my 4-year-old scream in the background. He's definitely compliant, if I may say so myself. But I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us to explore what this reuse program can look like for our market. And I encourage all of our licensees, our applicants, to keep asking about it and keep brainstorming about it, because I think Vermont really could be a leader in that way. So I want to share the CCB's great excitement for reuse programs. And if you're thinking about plans, specifically retailers, we open that your plans to be submitted to us. And specifically paying attention to how you can maintain child deterrence and child resistance through a reuse program. And Bryn, I don't want to say anything untoward, but I recall that you said to send the plans directly to you. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. Feel free to send them directly to Bryn, BRYNN .hare, like the rabbit, HARE, @vermont.gov.
Great. And I just wanted to know, talking to other board members as well, is that as we approach, even though it seems so far away, we're already thinking about it. The renewals of licenses, we'll really be looking and emphasizing at the positive impact criteria. And this is one way to achieve that for our licensees. And then continuing down the list that have already been submitted for questions. One person asked, I just started registering my cannabis at the product registration portal. I have 3 strains in the same harvest lot. I filled out the first one and sent it. Then I realized I had done it wrong. How do I cancel and redo? So the great thing right now, as Bryn mentioned, you're sending everything to the ccb.products@vermont.gov website. So if you do something wrong or need to make a change, it's an easy email to send. And I can modify what information we have on file, even if it's a typo or you submitted, for example, the wrong test result for the strain. That is easily remedied through an email to that email. And I would just say, please provide as much identifying information in either the subject or in the content of the email so we can connect all of the dots together and make sure we're giving you accurate information. And Carrie, that's all I see so far for product registration specifically. Most others.
Nope, very good. And the only sort of questions we received prior to the meeting about inventory tracking, really it was a vendor from OpenTHC, and the questions were really more about process and API and connecting to the system. And I don't see their name on here. If you are, raise your hand and we'll sort of go over some of that, but it really had to do with how a vendor was going to connect with our system and some of the things that are in place. And while we're still sort of operating in an interim system, we might not have all the answers to how vendors will connect. And because this is for the folks who've joined us and really about answering questions, Nellie's going to look and see who raised their hand first, but we might as well open it up right away and get some of the questions going.
First up is Jesse.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us, you guys, and for putting this on. I appreciate it. So my question around product registration is what qualifies as a product? So I'm assuming every different strain, but does that also include not only every strain, but a variation in what it's packaged as, let's say an 1/8 jar versus a pre-roll versus a joint box? And how is this applicable to wholesale?
Thanks. That was Jesse. Thank you, Jesse. So yes, you were right that each cultivar or strain is a separate product. And I think what's really key in what you said was the different packaging and how the label can be presented differently on each of the size or quantity that you mentioned. And so that's how it is characterized as a separate product for each. And then could you be more specific in what you mean, how that applies to wholesale or what you're trying to get at?
Yep. So if we are selling a pound to someone, do we need to register that strain?
Understood. Now I see what you're saying. Right.
All right.
So wholesalers, right? If it's the bulk flour, that's not hitting the consumer as a bulk flour, which that's not really how we're seeing things, then it would not be registered as a product.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
Anna.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome. First off, really appreciate you guys for putting this together this time of day. Perfect. So thank you. My question was along the same lines of what Jesse was talking about, because I'm a retailer that will want to purchase bulk flour to sell bulk to the consumer in reusable jars, which have a warning label, but they don't have a product label with like our logo in marketing. So it is a little confusing for us right now to know who registers the product, whether it's the cultivator and the retailer.
Anna, I'll let Lauren finish up, but I do want to sort of throw it out there that we're in the process of developing a guidance for bulk flour sales, and that'll be out shortly.
Okay.
Yep. And we do have your question about reusable jars, and we're gonna use our hive mind and collectively get back to you about that.
Okay, perfect.
Individually, but I'll let Lauren add to that as well.
I think that there's a little bit of a nuance between what Jesse mentioned and then what you were asking in terms of the wholesale is selling to the retailer. But when the retailer provides a product directly to the consumer, that's really the idea of the product. And so I think you should be registering that, and then we can also see what kind of adjustments we need to make in that requirement as we develop the bulk flour guidance, because it could evolve.
Okay, thanks. And just something to take into consideration is that our goal is to support small tier cultivators who could only offer us anywhere from half a pound to a pound. And we usually can sell that in anywhere from a day to 4 days. And just thinking as a sustainable process to have to register like 30 different strains a week as products, I just, that's something to think about. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Russ. Russ Todia. Oh, there you go.
Thanks. Hi, Lauren and Carrie. Thanks for having this. I have a lab testing question on pathogens. I just was hoping for some clarification. In Rule 2, that table for lab testing, there's a note on pathogens that trim flour needs to be tested at the process lot. But recently, that October guidance had a flow chart, and that had some verbiage that said that pathogen testing could be performed at the harvest lot. Mm-hmm. And I know that's how it's being interpreted, at least by some growers and at least by one lab. And my question is, if we're buying an individual or multiple cultivars from a grower, what do you expect our COAs to have in regards to pathogens?
Mm-hmm. The pathogens that we've got spelled out are the Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, and Aspergillus. I know that the hemp program pathogens are yeast and mold as well, or instead of, slightly different. But if your pathogens include the E. coli, Salmonella, and Aspergillus, that is what we're asking for, and we're looking for non-detect across the harvest lot. And sort of the reasoning behind why it's okay to do it at the harvest lot level is if you've taken a representative sample, the results or the instruments that are being used are sent to capture at that harvest lot level. And other nationally, the grows are much larger. So a representative sample will tell us if there's enough injurious pathogen on that sample. And we do have some lab folks on the line with us tonight if we want to take a deeper dive on some of the pathogens.
Thank you very much.
Tree Frog Farms.
Yes. So I just wanted to be just make sure I'm really clear. So if I have one strain that I'm selling pre-rolls as well as jars, I have to do two different registrations, one for the pre-roll, one for the jarred flower, and pay two separate fees of $50 for each one of those. And then I kind of had a comment for me as a cultivator doing wholesale. If I provided my COAs to them, if I sold them bulk and they were able to label their container with that information, would that kind of prove the registration of the product and stop that whole kind of headache right there? Thanks.
Tree Frog, you are a cultivator, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. At this point, as our guidance states, the two differences in packaging would be two separate products to register. But I also want to recognize what you're saying and know that, as we said earlier, the guidance is evolving. So I'm going to pause there because I hear what you're saying.
Would be a chance to get both of those into $150 fee if we provided all, here's what it'll look like in a jar, here's what it'll look like in a pre-roll, and here's a COA. Can we register it all for one? We might be moving towards that, you might think.
There's talks, there's discussion about it. I think we're all thinking about how it's different for small cultivators and supporting those small cultivators as I think we all are trying to do in this system. But at this point, it's still two products. So I'll say that. And then can you repeat the wholesale question again?
So for the wholesale, for it needing to be a registered product, but not being required from me as a cultivator, and the thought that it may be required on the distributor, that if I were to sell bulk and I just offered them, everything that I got my product registration for in, say, like an 1/8 type glass jar, and they use those stickers on, say, their jar that they had a 1/4 pound in, that they were doing a deli style sale, would that, it'll prove all of the information to the consumer at the time of purchase, and it wouldn't require multiple registrations on behalf of a retailer or what,
I have seen wholesalers register in that way. And similarly with retailers too, they're being really forthcoming of who the cultivator is and using the necessary COAs. It's almost a matter of the business relationship, the function of the wholesaler or the retailer of who's registering that product, depending on who has the label on it. And then I think we're also starting to see some white labeling, and I think you're drifting into that area as well, if that makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, but yes, your COA does travel with your product. And yep, and that once it's registered, your COA, your label, it all travels together.
Yep. My test results per strain or per process law can be used for both the pre-roll and the flour. I don't need a separate COA for pre-rolls than I do for flour. And only between, you know, manufacturing and stuff, doing dabs and stuff like that, it has to be different.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
GMD. Oh, they just lowered their hand. I'll give them another second in case they accidentally did that.
Sorry, having trouble unmuting myself there. My question is around testing, kind of edge case, I guess. If I have two different strains of cultivars with different flowering times, but growing together, one finishes at 8 weeks and the other one finishes at 10 or 11 weeks, how many harvest lots is that? Is that one or is that two?
So we're going to sort of let you decide if it's one or two. But if you read in the definition of harvest lot, it has to have gotten the same sort of treatment. So if you stopped treating the plant, you stopped fertilizing, you flush at the same time and it just takes 2 weeks longer to finish, you can consider that one harvest lot for testing purposes. But if it requires that if you're going to hit it with something different, you know, that doesn't leave a residue, we still would consider it. If you had to go in there with xylitol to finish during that last 2 weeks, we would consider that separate harvest lots. But if they received all the same treatment start to finish, you could consider that one for the purposes of testing.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle.
Hello, thank you guys for having us all, answering our lovely questions. My question is about tinctures and infused MCT oil. Is the cap 50 milligrams per bottle?
It is not. There is new guidance, and I just forgot. We'd originally, I'm going to phone a friend and ask Bryn. We'd centered around 1,000 milligrams per bottle, but seeing 1,200 milligrams per bottle in some product registrations, we may have changed that, and that guidance is forthcoming. Bryn, thank you.
I don't think you needed to phone a friend. That's all accurate. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, good.
Beautiful. Thank you guys.
Eric.
All right. So as a cultivator, if I sell a couple pounds to a retailer and they're using their jars and their labels, am I supposed to register it or are they supposed to register it?
They will. The retailer will register it, and they can use your COAs.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, it can also be part of a business arrangement when you're negotiating the sale.
Okay.
Bobby.
Hi, first of all, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Following up on that tincture question, I was hoping you could further quantify exactly what a tincture is in your eyes. For instance, I'm hoping to bring barbecue sauce to the market. If I label it as a barbecue sauce tincture, is that going to fly?
Bobby, for me, and this isn't a regulatory answer, but that doesn't really pass the straight face test. We do have a definition of tincture, and it really is sort of that dropper bottle, concentrated cannabinoids that you take sublingually or in another manner. But I'm more than willing to hear your argument. put together an email and send it to the board.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa.
While we're waiting for Teresa, I just wanted to plug one for Bobby, and that would be reach out to your local legislator and voice your disagreement with the current THC caps.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Teresa, hello.
Hi. So, my question has to do with product inventory. I did my initial inventory tracking online, and as I understand it, it's kind of a ongoing document as you're harvesting. So when I went to do my second week of inventory tracking, like to document some waste and things like that, I felt confused on, do I need to put in all the same information each time about the process lots, and because I also because I couldn't see what I had put in before, I was worried that I wasn't gonna put in the same information exact same way, and basically I had like 3 process lots. So do I have to put in the same information each time to say like, oh, then I had this much waste on this process lot? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, Teresa, and some of the harvest lot, number of plants, all that information should be the same. And you know, when we roll it all up and look at your grow, if we do have questions, I'll reach out to you. But I'll go in and look at your license number, your number of plants, and track that between the harvest lot and the process lots, and look at your weights. And if we have any questions, I'll reach out to you directly. But so far, I've largely been able to make sense of the information that folks are reporting. Does that help? Did I answer your question?
It does help. It would be easier if like I could, once I submit every 2 weeks, if I could like print off or go back and review what I've already documented. But it does make sense to me.
So yeah, Teresa, the system we're building, when you log in through your portal, you'll see absolutely everything that you've ever submitted. But while we're operating with this interim solution, we don't have as much flexibility with the Microsoft Forms.
Okay. All right.
So,
thank you.
Yep, when we roll out the portal, you'll be able to do exactly what you're asking.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris.
Hear me?
Yes.
Good. So I guess I have a few questions. That kind of answered some of my questions, that last one there. But so we're registered. We're going through our inventory every 2 weeks, and I'm just kind of, when is a plant as far as like cuttings go? If you take a bunch of cuttings, you got 50 cuttings. Are those all considered plants? Are we registering them as each individual plants, like once a cutting is taken? And then once it's rooted, I take the best cuttings and I throw away the ones that aren't the best. So I'm wondering how that works as far as plant size and when it's actually a plant. And then I have one other question about packaging after, or about registration after that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So once you set a run in veg, and the number of, and you count those plants in that harvest lot, that's when it's a plant.
So when it's a rooted cutting and you're putting it into a medium, basically.
No. When you've got it potted, and you call it yeah, when you call it a plant and you've got it in your veg room, I'm imagining you start your clones or your cuts in a little dome or something, and some make it and some don't.
Right.
Once it's rooted and up potted and you stick it in your veg room, that's when it's part of a harvest lot.
Gotcha.
And we're going to track it from that point on.
Gotcha. Okay, I guess the other part of my question is we were talking about product registration and submitting the label with the COA and all kind of at the same time. Now, that's going to be pretty difficult if I'm trying to like package up a bunch of flour, and I need to get the labels printed. Is there a way of getting the labels approved ahead of time before I go to that process, that step of registration?
Yep. If you wanted to email that separately to ccb.products@vermont.gov, we've had conversations with other applicants and licensees that wanted some approval and input beforehand. So yes, you can definitely send that to that email. It's just once you've submitted the product registration in the MS form, it's helpful to have the follow-up documents all in one spot, since we're reconciling the registration in many different parts.
Great, yeah, so we want to have a whole run of stickers done without
Yep. And
Thank you.
that's in the rationale of many people.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep.
Myra.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. Just make sure you guys can hear me okay. Sorry about that. So I have two questions. The first one was going back, I believe it was to Teresa's questions, kind of similar to that. My inventory report is due again today. So I was going to resubmit it, but I don't have any changes from 2 weeks ago because I'm still waiting on product testing to come back. Do I not submit a new inventory form, or should I go ahead and resubmit the same information again?
Yeah. So the requirement is to submit every 2 weeks, and I know it feels like nothing's changed. But we're just going to have you get used to that, because the new system, once it's rolled out, will have you interact with it on a bi-weekly basis. And even if nothing's changed, you just go in, interact with the system, say nothing's changed, and then leave. We're still going to have you do that, even though nothing's changed. It just means we end up deleting a record. Yep.
Okay, I just didn't want to make more work for you if you didn't want me to submit another form.
No, you're basically following the rules, even though it's making more work for us. But we've accepted that consequence of this system. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, and the second part of my question is just really a clarification that growers do not need to do product registration, that is for retailers and not for growers. Is that correct?
It's more so it depends. If you are a grower and want to have your own packaging, your own label on it, your name on it, then there are those with cultivation licenses that are registering products themselves or specific cultivars or strains. And then there are some that are leaving that to the retailer, and the retailer's packaging it, putting their label on it, and submitting the registration themselves.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Janine.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I got an email from the bank saying that they want copies of the information or the forms that we're submitting to CCB biweekly, but I forgot to hit print. Is there a way to get a copy of that I've already submitted?
Janine, it's not going to look like a form.
Okay.
It's going to look like a line on an Excel spreadsheet with your license number on it.
Okay.
Find out if that'll work for your bank.
Okay.
And it'll have your license number, your business number, the date, and all the information you submitted in sort of a spreadsheet format. So it won't look like a form, but we can email you back the information as a CSV file.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Rick. Rick C.
Good evening, everybody. Well, before I ask my actual question, I just want to confirm that the guidance we had before is once your application is submitted, you can conduct business until we get through the application process. Is that still correct?
Rick, what kind of license have you applied? What kind of license have you applied for?
Tier 1 indoor cultivator.
So that is what we have told the outdoor cultivators and what we have been moving forward with. Because of some of the other hurdles for manufacturers and retailers, that sort of didn't hold true for them because of the process. But yes, we expect to see plants if you're a cultivator. When we do show up for the inspection.
Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty forthcoming for me. My actual question was the inventory tracking. It's asking for a license number, which I do not have yet. How do I enter my inventory tracking without a license number? Because it's a required thing in your form.
Yep. So let's wait until you're actually licensed.
Okay.
Keep that information on a notebook or notepad. And when you're licensed, you start reporting then.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Keith.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, Keith.
I have two questions, Carrie, and they're directed towards you in general. One, how are you tracking all the movement of all the cannabis in the state of Vermont when it goes from grower to processor to manufacturer to lab to wholesaler to retailer?
Yep.
How are you tracking all that?
So we do have transfer.
My other part of my question is coming with that as well. I just have one more part. Are you tracking that with a transportation system that is loaded up with transportation vehicles with security systems in them to track that information as it goes, and it's required from the grower and the retailer and the grower and the wholesaler to conduct those transactions through there? So if I take all my plants and drive them to a processor that cures and dries them for me, and then they take them to the manufacturer, how are you taking that for each time those plants are touched and who's touched them to prevent pathogens from getting into the cannabis? And the other thing is, how come you're not tracking every single plant, every single grower is using to grow so there's no pathogens? And are you submitting one sample of flower, or are you submitting their whole lot of flower to be tested?
So Keith, there's a representative sample, and there's instructions how to take a representative sample from a harvest lot, and that's at least one from each strain that's in that harvest lot. But there are transfer forms. Are you licensed?
I'm not licensed at the moment.
So
I have a
you-
friend that's looking into getting licensed here in Vermont.
Okay, so you haven't interacted with the system at all.
No, I have a friend that's getting licensed here in Vermont, and they are a multi-state operator in 2 other states. And they work with Metric. That's why I'm asking for them, because they're going to be here tonight.
So they can continue to use Metric, and our system will have an API that Metric can build to, as well as any of the other point of sale or inventory tracking software systems out there. We'll be able to connect to the back end of our inventory tracking system. But to answer your other question, every time cannabis changes hands, there's a form that's filled out by the person that's receiving the cannabis as well as sending the cannabis. And it's a blind copy. It's a handshake. There's a handshake that happens on the back end. So the person selling the cannabis puts in a weight, the person receiving puts in a weight, and those weights must match when the handshake happens. You need to report what licensee you're sending cannabis to, and the receiver needs to report what licensee they're receiving from. It's a system that's similar to the one you're describing.
Okay.
The pathogens, we catch pathogen tests at multiple levels, but only where it matters. If there's a kill step that happens in processing, we're not asking for pathogen testing after it's been processed. If there is not a kill step, that concentrate needs to be tested. So if pathogens were picked up on the flower in transit and there's not a kill step at the manufacturer, then we'll pick it up at the extract will be tested. It would probably be most helpful for you to sort of interact with the system to understand it. There were a bunch of questions there. I don't know if I...
No, you submit some. I'm just curious because my friend is not here and he's in the process of opening a business here.
Yeah,
He's
if
already applied for his license.
if they're currently operating with Metric and want to continue operating with Metric, Metric does have an option to build to the API that our vendor and our folks at ADS publish, and that would allow them to continue tracking with Metric, and that information would get uploaded into our system so we can perform analytics on that. And that's true with a lot of retailers are using Dutchie, and the Dutchie folks have built an interim solution, so they're already sort of, yep.
Yeah, the Dutchie's API already builds right into Metric and builds into the other systems I know they're out there.
Mm-hmm. So we'll have a similar way to accept data once the system is built and operational. And I know, I saw Bridget on here, and we are looking at capturing waste in a better way as well. So your comment was received, and we're trying to accommodate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ellie.
Thanks for taking my question. Going back to the reporting of our harvest, I'm calling in as a tier 1 cultivator at the moment. I had reached out to the compliance email and received a response that said, and I'll read it off here, there is no need to report plants that are in your veg room. The reporting requirement starts when you move your plants into flower. And that seems to contradict what I heard earlier tonight.
In your bedroom?
Veg.
No, we do want to know, once it's a harvest lot, once you count plants, based on your tier, we want to know about them. So out of the clone room, we know there's going to be loss there, but once it's in veg, sort of it's static, you're going, you've hit go. And once you hit go, we want to know. Does that make
All right.
sense?
So, I mean, it does. It contradicts what was said here, and it's tricky for my small tier 1 cultivator setup because I have flower rooms that are separate from veg, and I pick which plants from veg I want to go put in the flower room. So I don't know which ones are in veg that are going to be flowered together.
Okay. Ellie, reach out to me. Do you have my email address?
I'm not sure. I'm sure I can look it up online. I have the ccb.compliance@vermont.gov.
Yep.
Does that get to you?
Yep, just send it there. Send it there. And I'd like to see the email. And we'll work through it. Yep. Callie, we're gonna make you turn on your camera, Callie. And just so folks know, Steep Hill was another licensed laboratory, and they're going through the process of getting all their method validations done. But I'd like to introduce everybody to Callie, and then you can ask your question.
I would love to turn on my camera, but it actually says it's only approved for select meeting attendees.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
We'll have to know you by
I
voice.
did try. Yeah, actually, I have Holly with me here as well. So Callie and Holly from Steep Hill, Vermont. We actually don't have a question, just a comment, but we're hoping it will be helpful for some people. So we took in a fair amount of wet flower over the past couple weeks that was coming in for testing potency and moisture. Likely, I think maybe because of the testing backlog, people are kind of trying to get ahead of the game. But we had quite a few fails for water activity and moisture. And when we reached out to cultivators, it sounds like it was being sent to us before the final cure step. So we just want to shed some light on this. I mean, obviously we had some fails in terms of water activity and moisture, which is going to cause a retest. So we just really want to encourage people to not submit flower until that final cure step so that you are not getting almost, a failure on water and then having to retest again.
And we do need to test for moisture content before we can test for potency. So unfortunately, you cannot just send a pre-cured product or pre-cured flower to us looking for potency results. The moisture content is one of the metrics that goes into the cannabinoids potency test. It's really important measure of yield, especially if the flower is going to be sold by weight. So unfortunately, those two go hand in hand. And like Callie said, we just really are encouraging people to send their flower when it is ready to be tested and for fully cured.
Let's see. Yarim is next.
Yarim, not to be outdone with Callie, but Yarim is also an applicant to open a testing lab, Red Clover testing. So we will have multiple labs going into next season. Go ahead, Yarim.
Oh, thank you, Carrie, for acknowledging us. Yes, like Carrie said, we are another lab that's looking into licensing in Vermont. I just have a couple comments. Well, first, a question is if you can point me out to where I can find that guidance on the representative sample. That way I can have it or not for our records. The other one is just a comment on the whole out of flower versus photo period. I would say I'm gonna say that they should be treated as two different harvests because at some point the out of flower it's gonna start flowering before the photo period, and it's gonna be moved to a different room for it to finish its cycle. In that room, it's gonna have to be fed different nutrients, which are heavy metals. It's gonna have to be fed different nutrients, which in the overall take
it will intake different nutrients at the end cycle of the other photoperiod plant. So they will end at two different stages, okay, intaking different nutrients. So that's just my comment on that. And we appreciate, and again, I appreciate your time and appreciate all the work that you're doing.
I haven't heard of anybody wanting to sort of combine photoperiod and autoflower in the same harvest lot. I think you're correct. They would need to be treated differently.
So we do have a number of folks joined by via phone. So I did want to take a moment to specifically check in with them. If anyone who is joined via phone has a question that they would like to ask, you may hit *6 to unmute, and I will call on you with the last 4 digits of your phone number as you unmute. The phone ending in 4448 has unmuted.
Hi there. My name is Ben with Pine Grove Organics. Thank you guys for taking the time tonight. We just got approved for our retail license, and there have been a lot of questions about products and registration, but I'll ask our variant. We're planning on selling bulk flower and have COAs provided by the producers. If we are selling that just as bulk flower, not white labeling it with our brands, is that a product that we as a retailer need to register?
Go ahead, Lauren. I don't.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Yes, as registered bulk flower, meeting the consumer at the retailer, that needs to be registered by the retailer. There's that nuance again, like we talked about with the bulk flower as a wholesaler. Does that make sense?
Just wanted to ask as a retailer. Thank you.
Definitely. Yep.
Anyone else from the phones specifically that have a question? Again, it's *6 to unmute. Okay. Seeing none unmuting, we'll continue with folks who haven't asked questions yet. So Ninth State Cannabis, you are next.
Howdy. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So the last guy kind of asked the question that I'm asking, and I've actually been told by you guys in particular that because I'm not putting my label selling it under the grower's name, that I don't have to register it and that the grower has to. So I'm kind of hearing the opposite.
Nope. If as I said before, the cultivator has their label on it and they're the one registering it, then you don't have to as a retailer. But there are some cultivators who are selling to the retailers and the retailers are putting their label on it. So that's when they register it.
Yep. So that's the confusion I have right there. So
Sure.
I'm putting a label on it, but I'm putting it as the cultivator's name. So not my label with my name on it or my stamp anywhere, but it's got who the cultivator is and how much it is. If that makes any sense.
Yep. No, it does. So that's almost a level of white labeling there. Since you have the packaging, you're creating the label. And so that would be registered by Ninth State.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I recognize there are nuances, so feel free to reach out to the email too if other scenarios like that come up.
Well, the only reason I brought it up is because I'm getting told differently from a field agent in particular.
Okay.
From one of you guys. That's why I brought it up now, because now you guys are saying it's opposite. That's why I was bringing it up.
Okay. could you reach out to the ccb.products@vermont.gov with the information you received, and that way we can reconcile it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, so we'll just, sorry, I don't mean to keep talking, but it was on the phone. It wasn't via email.
We'll chat. I've got your contact information, and I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Like,
I'm going to interrupt just for a second, guys, because we're at 8:01 now. I'm going to say that we've got three people with their hand up still, but because it's 8 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and wrap up now. And please, if you still have questions, send them to our info inbox, ccb.info@vermont.gov, and we will get those questions sent to the appropriate person and answered for you right away. But I want to just be respectful of everyone's time and wrap it up at 8 o'clock. But I want to also thank everybody for coming. This, I think, was really helpful for people. So thanks everybody for your participation, and have a great night. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.